Welcome back. Last time we learned about two of our government's branches, the legislative and the executive, which appear in the first two articles of the Constitution. Today we are going to learn about the third branch, the judicial branch, as well as what keeps any of these branches from gaining too much control. We will also look at what it means to be a good citizen in our country. The judicial branch is made up of our nation's court systems. Article 3 of the Constitution details the main job of the judicial branch, to judge the laws made by the legislative branch. This has been extended to also judging the actions of the president's executive orders. The highest court in our nation is called the Supreme Court of the United States, also called SCOTUS. The picture you see here is of the current Supreme Court. While the Constitution lists many qualifications for the president and members of Congress, surprisingly, there aren't any qualifications listed in the Constitution to serve on the Supreme Court. There's nothing that says you have to be a judge or even a lawyer first, although most have been judges before being named to the Supreme Court. The members of the court are called justices. The leader is the Chief Justice, currently John Roberts, who is seated in the center of the photograph. In all, there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Each of them serve a life term, meaning once they are on the court, they are on there until they die, unless they decide to quit or get impeached for doing something illegal before then. Members of the Supreme Court are chosen or appointed by the president. However, his pick isn't automatically a justice. Anyone the president picks has to be approved by Congress, specifically the Senate. In the picture, we see President Trump shaking hands with Brett Kavanaugh, who Trump nominated for the Supreme Court. After a lengthy hearing in the Senate, Kavanaugh was named the latest Supreme Court justice. The duties of the Supreme Court include interpreting the Constitution and other laws, and reviewing lower court decisions. While the Constitution sets up the 3 separate and distinct branches, it goes a step further to protect our people. The framers of the Constitution wanted to make sure that no one would be able to abuse their powers while they were in office. To make this happen, they devised a system of checks and balances that allows each branch to check up on the other branches. This system of checks and balances prevents any of the branches from abusing their powers and preserves the separation of powers. It also requires cooperation between the branches of government. Looking at the chart on the screen, we can see a number of ways the branches check the power of each other. The executive branch can veto or cancel legislation passed by the legislative branch. The president can also call Congress back into session if there's something important that the president wants Congress to discuss. The legislative branch is able to override the president's veto, but it takes a lot of congressmen in order to do that. The legislative branch can also impeach the president for wrongdoing. The executive branch checks the judicial branch, as the president is the only one who can pick or appoint federal judges. The legislative branch has a check on the executive branch by being able to approve or disapprove who the president picks as a federal judge. The judicial branch has a check on the other branches as well. The judicial branch can declare laws passed by the legislative branch or executive orders made by the president as unconstitutional if the Supreme Court believes that the law or order is against what is stated in the Constitution. The legislative branch also has the ability to impeach members of the other branches. If the president or a member of the Supreme Court breaks the law, the legislative branch can impeach the person and bring charges against him or her, which results in a trial in the Senate. If found guilty, the person could be removed from office. Having these different checks on each other maintains a balance of power among the 3 branches. For a representative democracy to work, Americans need to fulfill their civic duties and responsibilities. A duty is a thing we must do. We don't have a choice. If we don't perform our civic duty, we will be jailed or fined. A responsibility is a thing we should do. These aren't required, and you won't go to jail if you don't do them, but our democracy won't function without people doing their civic responsibilities. One duty we have is to obey the laws. We elect people to make laws for our nation, and in turn, we have a duty to follow those laws. We also have a duty to pay taxes. Our nation relies on taxes to be able to do all the things that need to be done, from building roads to our national defense. We must also defend our nation in times of war. In fact, when males turn 18, they are required by law to register for the draft. And if our nation needs additional soldiers in a time of war, a lottery will be held to draw draft numbers. If your number is drawn, you are required to join the army and defend the nation. If you refuse, you will end up in jail. You also have the duty to serve in court when you are called. All adults are eligible to be called to serve on a jury to hear criminal or civil court cases and must attend if they are called for jury duty. You also have a duty to attend school. Having an educated society is critical for the success of our country, and therefore all children and teens must attend school. In addition to those duties that you must do, we all have civic responsibilities that we should do. First and foremost, you should be informed. Staying informed about what's happening in our nation and in the world is critical to maintaining a democracy. You will also have the responsibility to vote. Use the knowledge gained from being informed to vote for elected officials who represent you. When you turn 18, you will begin voting in all federal and state government elections. There's no penalty for not voting. You won't go to jail if you don't vote. But that's the way we tell our representatives if we agree with what they're doing and what we want them to do. We also have the responsibility to respect others' rights, respect diversity, and contribute to the common good. Now you know the basics of all three branches of government, as well as how those branches check the power of each other to maintain a balance of power throughout our government. You also know what your duty is, the things you must do, and what your civic responsibilities are. You are on your way to becoming a great citizen.